Okay, go for it, Arth.
Okay. If an ox was pursuing another ox, and if the ox being chased was later found damaged, and this one, the damaged party, says, your ox did the damage, and this one, the owner of the pursuing ox, says, not so, rather it injured itself on a rock. The law is that the burden of proof rests on the one who seeks to exact money from his fellow. If two oxen, each belonging to a different person, were pursuing a single ox that belonged to a third person, and the ox being chased was later found injured, this one, the owner of the one of the pursuing oxen, says, your ox did the damage. And this one, the owner of the other pursuing ox, says, no, your ox did the damage.
Okay, good. I'm going to share the second part of the Mishnah now. Just give me a sec. Arthur, your reading's actually improved, believe it or not. I'm serious.
Thank you. Well, this is a fun one because I know what I'm reading.
All right, this is the second part.
Now we get into the other oxen chasing each other, and the more are chasing each other. Okay. Must I read on?
Yeah, so where you ended off in your sentence as a matter of interest is you were halfway through a sentence. So your ox did the damage, and this one, the owner of the other pursuing ox says, no, your ox did the damage. And then both of them are exempt.
Are exempt. Okay. Okay, both of them are exempt. If both of them belong to one man, both of them are liable. If one of these oxen was large and one was small, and the damaged party says the large ox did the damage, while the damager says not so, rather the small ox did the damage. Or if one ox was a tam and the other one was a muad, and the damaged party says the muad did the damage, while the damager says not so, rather the tam did the damage. If both of these cases, the burden of proof rests on one who seeks to exact money from his fellow. The Mishna, to this point, has discussed a case in which a single ox was chased by two oxen. The Mishna now discusses a case where two oxen were chased and both were injured, but it is not known which ox was injured by which pursuer. If the damaged oxen were two, one large and one small, and the damager were also two, one large and one small, and the damaged party says, the large ox damaged the large one, and the small ox damaged the small one, while the damage says, not so. Rather, my small ox damaged the large one, and my large ox damaged the small one. Or if one ox was tam, and one ox is muad, and the damaged party says, the muad damaged the large ox, and the tam damaged the small one, while the damage says, not so. Rather, the tam damaged the large ox, and the muad damaged the small one. In both of these cases, the burden of the proof rests on the one who seeks to exact money from his fellow.
Excellently read, Arthur. Excellent. All right. So, Gavin, what I was going to ask you going forward, I'm actually pleased you went out for a meal. It was good for you. No issue there. When you have the book in front of you, please, God, from next week, we're going forward to the second daf. You would need to prepare. If you're going out for lunch, you've got between Friday night and Sunday to prepare in the time that you see fit. But it'll be a heck of a lot easier when you have a book in front of you. Do you agree? You okay with that, mate? Okay?
Yeah, 100%.
So what your job is, I mean, Kevin teaches us halacha, Arthur does the film editing, I goof around, and what your job is that maybe you got a scanner?
No.
Okay, but you got a camera.
Got a camera.
So maybe what you can do is take pictures of the book and send it to Kevin so he can prep. Because I just got
scanner app is better. With a scanner app is much better.
Yeah, there's a scanner app. Arthur will give it to you. But
I've got a scanner.
If you could send that to the guys, I'd appreciate that because every one of us does stuff. Arthur's editing takes quite a while. Kevin teaches us. And if you could be the official scanner, that would really help. Would you be able to? All right.
Yeah, sure.
Thanks, mate. I'm pleased you went out for lunch. No objection there. All right. Now, this is the longest Mishnah I've ever seen, to be honest. It's a very.
I'm a little confused by all the oxen chasing each other and how it works.
That's my job. My job is to make order from chaos. I'm kidding.
Head or tail of it, Damon.
Head or tail of it. All right, so listen, this is what you've got to remember about this Mishnah is this is the game. What's the game? The damaged party wants to claim the maximum amount of money. What is the game? The damager wants to pay the least amount of money. That is the game of every litigant in a court trial. You've got the plaintiff, the one trying to sue for money, and the defendant saying, I don't owe that money, or I owe very little of that money. This is a game. This is only a game. And the game is human greed. And what happens is that each one is determining what they are owed by the other party. The damager says, I owe you next to nothing or nothing. The damaged party says, you owe me everything. And this is the game that's going to ensue. Have I summarized it in one sentence reasonably well? Okay, fine. Now we're going to see how the game unfolds blow by blow. And I'm going to read the Mishnah. Arthur, your reading's improved. Seriously, man, it really is good. All right, so I'm going to read and explain it to you blow by blow. Okay. I'm actually just going to zoom out a bit, so it's a bit smaller. Now I have to zoom. Jeez. This is the only thing that honestly bugs me. All right. So, first game. If an ox was pursuing another ox, and the ox being chased was later found damaged, and this one, the damaged party says, your ox did the damage, and the owner of the pursuing ox says, not so. Rather, it injured itself on a rock. And the law is that the burden of proof rests on the one who seeks to exact money from his fellow. Okay, so let's just deal with that first case at the moment. The burden of proof, when you're suing somebody, always rests on who? The person trying to sue the other person for money. If there's no evidence, you can't get money. And it has to be like that. Now, what happens, you say, if there weren't enough witnesses at the time, or there wasn't a lack of sufficient proof? Well, the reality is, what would you prefer, guys? Would you prefer the converse? Because the converse means anybody can take what you've built a lifetime to achieve away in 2 minutes if there's no burden of proof that rests upon them. So say, for example, we take a look at SARS. SARS has now got policies that if they deem you owe tax, they can do what they did to me and my brother. They can take money out of your account. And the onus is of you to prove your innocence. And they can actually extract it out of your business account. That's number one. Number two, your tax clearance certificate used to be on an annual basis and can now be revoked if they deem you owe any money. So this is what happens when you live in a society where the government or political party or anybody has the right of claim without providing any evidence thereof. And that is a dangerous society. That's a self-destructive society. So it has to be that way. So what you notice here is also the tone of the Mishnah. The damaged party said, your ox did the damage. Now, when he said that, did he say your ox might do the, I think your ox did the damage? No, it was emphatic, your ox did the damage. And what did the defendant say? No, rather it injured itself on a rock. Not so, it injured itself. So what guys do you see the tone of both parties here?
Well, the one here.
They're just trying to get out of it. The one's trying to get out of it, and the one's trying to accuse the other one of doing it.
Correct. But what I'm trying to show you here is the tone is one of being absolutely sure that they are correct and making unilateral statements with absolute dictatorial certainty without any evidence.
Because but that happens today in courts.
Of course it happens in the court.
It happens all the time. Yeah.
Exactly. So what we're going to discuss in the Mishnah going forward is just because somebody is certain in their tone doesn't mean they're right. And I've often had this discussion with one or two of you guys privately. You make unilateral statements with absolute confidence that when I was first friends with one or two of you guys, I believed you because of the confidence in which you just uttered your opinion And I deemed it as fact because you were so sure of yourself, when in fact evidence came to light after the fact that you guys didn't know what you were talking about.
You seem to be looking more at me than anybody else.
I'm looking straight forward like Stevie Wonder, so I don't lose friends here. All I'm saying is that I used to, when I was younger, naively believe that if somebody had confidence in what they said, that confidence meant that it was correct. It just meant they were delusional. Okay, so confidence is no indicativeness of truthfulness, okay? Merely of self-aggrandizement that they're talking the truth. All right, so let's just go through this very, very clearly. So if you have a look, let me just show you in terms of Rashi and Tosfot, is, okay, so what happens is, there's Rashi's approach and Tosfot's approach. There's a slight variant. So if we have a look at the statement, I just want to read something to you, and said, your ox did the damage and the owner of the pursuing ox is not so, rather it injured itself on a rock. Okay? There's two sorts of interpretations here. There's the Rashash and Mirameh Sadeh, which basically says that if the ox injured itself against a rock while being chased, the owner of the pursuing ox would be liable since his ox caused the damage. Why? Because, and to me this is more logical, is that if something's running away from a predator, the speed at which it's running, if it collides into something, it's going to cause it much injury. So therefore it's the pursuer's fault. Okay? As far as the Rashba and the Meiri are concerned, it's not the case. It's concerning causation. It's basically causation of damage, which means grama. It's indirect damage, okay, at which the attacking ox or the chasing ox is not liable. And the reason why it's not liable is because otherwise the case in the Gemara wouldn't have a defense. In other words, if I'm turning around to you and saying, listen, your ox injured itself against a rock, and I'm seen as liable because my ox chased your ox at that speed, and therefore that's why your ox injured itself, there's no ways that as an attacking owner of an attacking ox, that would be a credible defense. So obviously the Gemara seems to be holding that it's indirect damage. Does that make sense? It's causative damage. And therefore that is his defense. The bottom line is of it, it doesn't matter. This one is adamant that the other person's ox damaged him, and the other one is adamant that his ox injured itself on a rock. So the burden of proof lies upon the person that's claiming money. Okay? That's so far very straightforward. Now, if we have a look as far as that's concerned, the owner of the pursuing ox has to deny the allegation. And if he denies it, how would there be a burden of proof? Well, we're going to discuss this in the ensuing Gemaras. We're going to say, do you need witnesses? Is it okay if they examine the animal, etc., etc.? So, say, for example, we're looking at a case. Let's just look at a different case here. Let's go on. If we say if two oxen, each belonging to a different person, were pursuing a single ox that belonged to a third person, the ox being chased was later found injured. This one, the owner of the pursuing ox, says your ox did the damage. And this one, the owner of the pursuing ox, says, no, your ox did the damage. What I'm going to do is share my screen here so that this makes a little bit more sense to you guys. Okay, let's look at the second case. Okay. If we have a look at the case here. Kev, you want to read?
If an ox was pursuing another ox, and the ox being chased was late. Wait.
If two oxen.
If two oxen, each belonging to a different person, were pursuing a single ox that belonged to a third person, and the ox being chased was later found injured, this one, the owner of the pursuing ox, says, your ox did the damage. And this one, the owner of the other pursuing ox, says, no, your ox did the damage.
Okay.
So one of those two pursuing, they're not taking responsibility.
Correct. And then, therefore, what are they doing? Both the halacha is both of them are exempt. Why?
Impossible to, unless there's witnesses, it's impossible to know which ox caused the other animal to hit to injure itself on the rock.
Exactly, Gavin. So as Rashi said, because each one can shift the blame on the other, and the damaged party can't collect unless he can prove which ox did the damage. And if you want to say if they're witnesses, the Gemara brings that point and says, look, there are witnesses who saw the damage being done by an ox, but they cannot identify which ox did the damage. This is according to the Meiri and Nimukei Yosef, because you don't know what one ox looks like compared to another. It happens fast. So witnesses alone aren't going to help. So at what point is a person obligated? Well, they're obligated when it says if both of them belonging to one man, both of them are liable. Why? Because you can't shift the blame onto the other owner of the ox. One person owns both the oxen. So when we use the term both are liable, how can both oxen be liable if only one of the oxen did the damage? And the Gemara is going to come and explain what that term means later on. And what it means is if the one ox that goes missing and you don't know which ox did the damage, because it's one owner, can you claim from the other ox or can you not claim from the other ox? Because you don't know if that ox that remained is the one that actually did the damage. So it depends if it's tam and muad. And we're going to go through that. But the bottom line is the owner can't shift blame because he owns both. The question is if he still has to pay if you cannot identify which ox is a different matter. Okay, let's go on. Fine. If both of them belonging to, if one of these oxen were large and one small, and the damaged party says, so let me just share the screen with you because this will help. I always believe that if you're reading it yourself, it helps. Okay. All right. Art, you want to read? If both of them belong, not here. If one of these oxen were large and one was small, read it slowly.
Just point again, James. I missed that. Okay. If one of these oxen were large and one was small, and the damaged party says the large ox did the damage, while the damager says not so, rather the small ox did the damage.
Stop there. Okay. So, guys, what do you think is happening here? The reason I want to ask you questions, I don't want to give it to you. I want you guys to use your brains. You're smart.
I can contribute. Well, Kevin, you want to give it a go? Otherwise, I'll give it a go.
Okay, so I think depending on how much damage was inflicted, if the damage was inflicted by, if they could establish that only a smaller ox caused the damage, then that smaller ox would be liable. But if it was substantial damage that could only have been inflicted by a heavier ox, then maybe that one would be liable. The owner of that one would be liable.
Okay, I mean it might be a factor. What is something? And Arthur did prep, so I'm not punishing Arthur for practicing. I just want to see if Gavin can cup it without prep.
Yeah, I think I've cupped it. Let me give me a chance. Let me try. If I haven't got it, I apologize.
Okay, no one's interrupting you, Bate.
This is my feeling.
Yeah.
The guy whose oxen was chasing, he's going to the damage part. The damager is going to want to select his small ox, and the damage party is going to want to select the bigger ox. Because what happens with time, you're limited to the body of the animal. So if you're the damage party, you want the bigger animal so you can get a bigger amount. If you're the damager, you want your smaller animal. So in a thumb case, you're going to have this conflict of interest from both sides. You understand what I'm saying?
Perfect. Kevin, did you hear? And Arthur knew. Kevin, did you hear?
Yeah.
So the issue is here, we're talking about thumb oxen. So for example, let's look at the two rules of thumb again. The first rule of thumb is if I owe you, the living ox is worth, for example, 200 zuz, and your carcass is now worth 50 zuz, right? If my ox was muad, I would owe you 150 zuz. Okay? if my ox that did the attacking was tam, I only owe you 75 zuz. But I only owe you 75 zuz if my attacking ox is worth at least 75 zuz. If my calf happens to be a great aimer and hit your ox directly in the heart, but it's a puny little thing and that thing's only worth 40 zuz, I only have to pay you 40 zuz out of the 75 zuz. So what's happening now is the injured party is saying, your big ox damaged and killed my ox or injured my ox, and I want full half payment damages because it's a big ox and it mustn't be limited, hakufo, by the body of the damaging ox itself. And then the person that's owned the attacking ox says, not true. It's my tiny ox that damaged your ox. And therefore, what we're saying is, in that particular case, I don't owe you a lot. Does that make sense? Kev? Gavin's 100% correct.
And also, it's also part of the philosophy is to sell both the live ox and the dead ox. So if it's a smaller ox, you're not going to, just from the sale, you're not going to get a lot of money from it as well.
Yeah, but to keep the issue very clear, let's stick
I just kept it
saying first. Let's keep it one thing at a time. It was clear, perfect. Kevin, do you get where we were coming from?
Yeah.
So what are we saying in a nutshell?
Saying that it's basically it's it's based on a case of the two oxen or tum oxen.
No. Let's just it doesn't matter what the ox that damaged was, whether it was tum or muad. What I'm saying is as follows: say it's you and me, Kevin, okay, and I've got the attacking ox, and you've got the ox that was injured or dead, right? You would want to, as the injured party, claim back as much as you can. And the thing of it is, you can, as it is, claim back half the damages because my attacking ox was tum. Now, if the attacking ox was tum, you're already upset because you can't claim back full damages. You further don't want to be reduced by having it limited by the body of my attacking ox. So I've got two oxen. I've got a big ox and a small ox. Now, if my tiny ox attacked your ox and killed it, not only would you not, in fact, get full damages, but that half damages might even be reduced by the fact that my attacking ox is so puny, it's worth even less than half damages. And therefore, we pay up to the body of the attacking ox, which means you're going to get a really short change. You're going to get far less than half of the damages. Are you with me? But if my big ox was the one that attacked your ox, at least you would get half damages because it's a fat ox and you're not going to get limited by the damaging body limitation of a tiny animal. Does that make sense, Kevin? So as the person who owns the ox that was attacked, you at least want half your money. You don't want even less than that. And I, as the person having an ox that attacked you, don't want to pay half. I even want to pay less. So I'm saying that the ox that attacked your ox was worth even less than half damages because we go in the body of the attacking animal, and it was so puny that if out of 150 zuz worth of damage in full, I owe you 75, but my ox is only worth 45, it means I only pay you 45. So it's a win for me as the damager, but as the damaged, you are at a distinct disadvantage. Are you with me? Kev?
Yeah.
Okay, you get where we're coming from. All right.
Yeah.
Fine. So is my screen still sharing for you guys?
Yes, it is.
Okay, good. So let's just have a look. All right, so the next thing is, or if one ox was a tam and the other was a muad, and the damaged party says the muad did the damage, while the damager says not so, rather the tam did the damage. Again, we have the same principle. Kevin would want, Kev, you with me? Kevin would want my ox that attacked his ox to be muad. Kevin, why would you want such a thing? Also, I know you've done revision.
Because it's full damages.
Correct. And why wouldn't you want my tam to attack your ox?
Because it's half damages.
Correct. So we're saying the same in the previous statement of a big versus a small animal. If my tiny animal, if my tiny and large animal were both tam, you would want my fattest animal to attack you because at least you get half. If it's puny, you might not even get a quarter if it's that tiny. So it's just pure greed. As the attacked party, you want the most. As the attacking party, I want to pay you the least. It's a game. It's a game of greed.
No. There has to be compromise reached because how can you work it out? It's impossible to figure out.
Kevin's point is brilliant because what we're going to learn in the ensuing Gemara is a discussion between Sumchus and the rabbis. And Sumchus says, listen, we have to reach a compromise. And the rabbi says, no. The rabbis say the burden of proof rests on the one on the plaintiff, the one that's trying to extract money from the defendant. You need evidence. And Sumchus is saying, let's come to a happy medium. Neither one can be totally sure. So we'll get to that. So that's exactly the essence
Damon,
of the Gemara is trying to go. Yes. Oh, sorry, mate.
This even happens if you try to sell a car. The guy selling the car wants more than what it's worth. Everybody's frozen for a second. Hello?
Hello.
I'm not frozen. I'm here.
Okay, so it froze. It's like when you sell a car. The guy selling the car wants more, and the guy buying the car wants to get it for less.
Exactly. And I think if we even take a case, exactly as Arthur said, of the worst one, I was an estate agent once upon a time. Amazing times. That career was a dark part of my history. It wasn't, somebody threw a potato at me once when I went to go prospect at them. So what happens is that people believe their home is precious more than anything. Why? They have 20 years of memories with the home. So selling a house is the worst because the owners think that the house is worth so much more than it is, and the buyer's got no emotional connection. At least with a car, it's only greed. When you're trying to sell a house, there's emotional attachment added to the greed. The worst combination you could ever imagine. The worst. And it's the most expensive item anybody will ever own. So that greed factor kicking in shows the disgustingness of human nature. Just thought I'd share. Fine. So as far as that's concerned, we're now going to the next part. Exactly as Kevin said. So, and the damage party said the muad did the damage, while the damages said not so. Rather, the tam did the damage. In both of these cases, the burden of proof rests on the one who seeks to exact money from his fellow. So that's the rabbi's opinion. You need evidence. Sumchus's opinion is like Kevin's, who says that they should reach some sort of a compromise. Fine. Now, let's just go through one more thing. Then I'm going to share my screen again.
So if they come to a compromise, they can bypass the best thing then. There's no need to go, right?
Absolutely.
Out of court.
Absolutely.
So that's always the best. And that's what
it's always the best. However, sometimes we believe we're adamantly right and don't feel like compromising because we feel we're losing half of something we have not entitled to lose. And you know who the worst people are? They're the lowest form of life, pond scum, are attorneys. Because you know what they do? They work on the greed factor and they say to their clients, we've got an excellent chance of winning this case. The corridor.
That's what they. Can I give you an example? My ex-business partner.
No personal examples on YouTube.
No, it's fine. It's fine. No, it's not. I'm not giving away anything. My ex, I could have been in a lot of businesses. My ex-business partner used the top lawyers. I think the ones which Schottenstein. Who's that? They became.
Yeah, but now we're mentioning names. Okay, this is
no. Okay, he used one of the top legal companies that told him he had a case. He had no case, and he spent about a bar trying to fight me, and he lost overall. He lost all that money. Anyway, carry on.
Okay. All right. So the next part, the Mishna to this point has discussed a case in which a single ox was chased by two oxen. The Mishnah now discusses a case where two oxen were chased and both were injured, but it is not known which ox was injured by which pursuer. All right, Kevin, do you have this understanding? Can I repeat it?
Please, yeah.
Okay, so up until now, we're talking about one ox that was damaged and one ox that did the attacking. We are now discussing a case where there are two oxen that are damaged, owned by one person, and two oxen that did the attacking by another owner. Do you get what I'm saying? So it was 1-on-1 before, and now it's 2-on-2. So if the damaged oxen were two, the injured oxen were two, one large and one small. And the damages were also two, one large and one small. And the damaged party says the large one damaged the large one, and the small one damaged the small one. Okay, so the injured party says your large ox damaged my large ox, and your small ox damaged my small one. While the damager says, not so. Rather, my small ox damaged your large one, and my large ox damaged your small one. So Kevin, explain why each of them would have that viewpoint. What do they have to gain?
Well, it's the least amount of liability.
Correct. Explain how it would play out.
If the large, actually, so I thought you were talking. I didn't realize you were actually reading this. Okay. So if the large ox damaged another large ox, and the values were similar, and if we're assuming it's tam or regard, that is not a factor.
That's totally a factor. That's exactly the point. It is absolutely totally.
So then the damages are going to be halved on the value of the attacking ox, and on the damage caused. So the damagee is going to lose is being out of pocket, but the damager in that case will gain in some respects. I mean, he still has to pay, but he's not going to pay as if it was a muad. But
okay, so that's a good point. So basically, what you've got to bear in mind is as follows. Let's just discuss this. All right. So this is what you've got to think about. Witnesses saw each of the pursuing oxen injuring one ox, but they couldn't tell which ox injured which ox. Okay. So both oxen doing the damage belong to the same person, and both damaged oxen likewise belong to one owner. This is according to the Nimukei Yosef. So Nimukei Yosef is just explaining the point of view. So there's one damaged party, the nizak, and one person liable for the damage, the mazik. Okay? So the Mishnah basically speaks of a case where both damaging oxen were tam, exactly as Kevin said, because otherwise the weight of the ox would have no bearing. So the damaged party can collect half damages, but only from the body of each damaging ox. So the damager's large ox can cover half the damage done to the large ox, okay? While the damager's small ox can only cover half the damage done to the small ox. So if we're saying for the damaged, the damager's point of view, it makes sense that he's saying, listen, your large ox damaged my large ox. Why? Because he wants to recover the most from his large ox, okay? So he can only do that based on half payment damages, so he's already losing half, but also based on the limitation of the attacking ox. So obviously he wants his larger ox to be attacked by the larger ox, so he can recuperate at least half of his money. And he doesn't mind if the smaller ox damaged the smaller one, because there'll be less damage according to the value, and therefore he can extract less from the smaller ox. Okay, so the thing of it is, since the small ox is not even worth half the damages of the large ox, the nizak will receive only the small ox's payment and will lose the rest. And he'll only receive half the damages of the smaller ox from the damages larger ox. But this amount that he would have been able to collect from the damages small ox in any case. So he gains nothing at that end for the smaller ox attacking the smaller ox. But he loses part of the damage because of his inability to collect anything more than the body of the small ox. So this is according to Rashi, so what he's saying is, if the small ox attacked the large ox, he's in trouble because he really loses more than half because you're paying on this value of the smaller ox. Okay? So it's axiomatic that each ox's damages can be only collected from the body of the ox that damaged. And a shortfall in one can't be made up by the collection of another. So what does Rashi mean? It's axiomatic. He's saying, look, you can't just take two of the oxen that did the attacking and two of the oxen that you have a carcass or damage and add the two together and minus the two together and then work out a general principle. So that's what Gavin alluded to in the beginning. Remember, Gav? It wasn't a bad point. Why wasn't it a bad point? Because Rashi even brought it up. So he's saying maybe you think you could take both living oxen, sell them together, split the half the proceeds, and then take the carcasses of both, or the injury of what the living ox would be, as well as the other one, and then add those both and then pay the difference. Or that's according to Rav Yehudi. According to Rav Meir, is that you say, listen, what's the difference between the living animal and the damaged animal or the dead animal? Take the difference and then take the two living attacking oxes, sell them and split the money by half. But Rashi is saying you can't do that. It's not axiomatic where the totals are put together. We have to assign the right attacking ox with the right injured party. Does that make sense? So that's why the damaged party is saying, no, your large ox damaged my large ox and your small ox damaged my small ox. And the damage is saying the converse, because the one wants the most and the one wants to pay the least. All right, one more point. The more damage, okay, in both of these cases, the burden of proof rests on the one who seeks to exact money from his fellow. Okay, so that's already discussed. Okay, I think, guys, before we go into Sumkus and all the other details, let's stop at this point. I'm happy.
Thanks. I've got to go 2 or 3 minutes anyway. Thank you.
All right, guys. I hope this was productive.
Damon, you took the bull by the horns with this one. Thank you very much.
No, we aren't getting anything from Kevin this morning here. No.
Oh yes, please, Kevin. Teach us better.
But I just want to make a comment, Damon. When it comes to witnesses, when two bulls of the same size and they attack two bulls, you're not going to be able to identify them. But if it's a massive bull and a calf, you can identify which bull attacked which bull.
Okay, so this Gavin's brought up a good point. Quickly, let's just address this for 1 minute. Is Gavin, they've often, you know what you're saying. In logic, it's absolutely correct. In practicality, it doesn't work like that. Let me tell you why. Because I thought about it. I thought it's a brilliant question, by the way. Thought about it. What happens is that you don't know whom owns who, because you'd see oxen fighting, and there's dust clouds. There's no roads. There's no concrete. You just see too big and too small. You don't know who started. You don't know who didn't. And I tell you something. They've done many cases where there's been robberies that have been committed, murders. Do you know people don't even know if the person was wearing a green T-shirt or a red T-shirt?